Hello, my name is Professor John Benjamin. I'm the Assistant Professor of Graphic Design at West Virginia Wesleyan College, and I'm going to introduce you to Adobe Premiere. In the last episode, I showed you how to import media and how to get things organized. Now we're going to move things onto the timeline and see how to work with actual editing. All right, so hopefully you still have your file from last time. If not, well, you can try to get caught up. But you should have something that looks like this. We're still in assembly. And I'm going to change this list view down here back to icon view, icon view. And then I'm going to move up here to the top from assembly to editing. And now notice there's a series of tabs here. And what Adobe Premiere has done is they're sort of indicating that this is the order of the post-production process. So we start with assembly, then we go to editing, then color correction and effects, and so on and so forth. Depending on your style, you may change those around, but that's sort of a guiding principle there. So now let's move from assembly to editing. All right, and here you should see down here in your project panel, your bins. And we have our footage bin and our music bin. So let's go ahead and open up our footage bin. And we're going to go ahead, and you can just double click on it. And now we're going to review our footage, and we're going to select the best files is what we're going to do. So we need to scrub and review them and then start putting them into a sequence on our timeline. So the first way that you can review and to help you sort out your good footage from your not so good footage is to simply look at the thumbnail. And again, you have to be in icon view and then move your cursor across it. And you can see the whole, you can scrub across and go forwards or backwards and see everything that's on the video. So that's the first way you can go ahead and check out. And again, any bad footage, go ahead and just get rid of it. You won't be deleting it permanently from here. You'll just be moving it outside of your bins. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is I want to review it a little bit more closely now that I've sort of sorted things a little more. And I'm going to go ahead and double click on this New York City pan right now. Now up here in my source panel, I can see it a little bit bigger. And if I want, I can move these panels to see it a little even better. So to review this footage, we're going to go ahead and click on the CTI, or the current time indicator, and you can move it across backwards and forwards to get an idea, a better idea of what the footage is going on there. Now, other ways to review are your left and right arrows. You can move up and down one frame by using those, or you can hold the Shift key and move up and down 5 frames. Now, the last way I want to show you how to review things is a really important sort of industry standard that you might want to start now and getting used to. It's the JKL keys. So the JKL keys, L moves the cursor forward, K stops it, and J moves it backwards. And this is sort of the way that most videographers will review their footage. Now, you can also go quickly by hitting L twice, or even 3 times, or J twice, and then K to stop. So that's really the best way to review it. Now the next thing we want to do is typically you're not going to use an entire clip. There's only a section of each clip that you want to use. So to make things simple, you can, well, one of the things, you could drag that whole clip onto your sequence, onto the timeline, but I want to show you that typically that's not how you'll do it. You'll want to set your in and your out. So like for instance, this footage, I don't want this rotating pan right here. I just want to start with this gentleman as we're looking down Times Square. So right about there. I'm going to hit the I key. And that's going to send my in point right there. And you can also click here to mark your in and your out. And then I'm going to move up here, and I only want a bit of the clip, so where it pans and we see the full part of that tower there. And so I'm going to hit out. All right, so now what happens is that's all the footage I'm going to bring onto my timeline. That's all I really want to do. So I'm sort of speeding up my process a little bit. The next thing I want to point out is I can bring the whole piece of footage onto my timeline by simply clicking on the center of it. I can drag it down here, and there it is on my timeline. Now I get the audio and the video. But in this case, I don't really want the audio, so I'm going to hit Control-Z. If you're on a Mac, that's Command-Z. And I can just bring in just the video footage. So I'm going to click on this icon and drag it down in here, and then I just get the video. Because that audio is just background noise. I don't really want it. Okay, so here it is on my timeline, and now I can review this video and my whole sequence right up here in the program panel. The same way, just by moving the CTI, and you can use your arrows and the JKL as well. I'm going to make this a little smaller, and And I'm going to make this effects panel a little smaller and make my program panel a little bit larger. So here is my timeline. Now what's happened, automatically when I drag footage onto my timeline, a sequence is created. And so this is the sequence. You can make multiple sequences, but this will be predominantly your film. All right, and so to find the sequence that we've created here, it's called, I've called mine The Nature of Humans. That's what this film is going to be about. It's looking at humans and nature and how they interact. And so I've already had that sequence prepared. So yours probably doesn't necessarily have a name on it. So what you'll want to do is go ahead and find your sequence, and you can find it. I'm going to go look at my sequence folder. So here's mine. And this is the little icon that tells you it's a sequence. So if I change from icon view to list view, you can see there's a little sequence icon there, and that's how you know it's your sequence. So if your sequence isn't in your sequence folder, no problem. It might be in your footage folder. So you just go find the piece with that little footage sequence icon, and then you can just move it. Probably the easiest way to do it is list view. And like here, for instance, I'll go ahead and take my sequence, and let's say I want to move it to another folder. I can go ahead and just Command X or Control X, and then go back to my sequence folder, and then just Control V, and there it is. Okay, so that's my sequence. So I want to bring it back up. I'm going to double click. You can create multiple sequences. You can come down here to your new item and create a second sequence, and you can, that's a great way to save time. So you can have different parts of your film in different sequences, and then you can build all those sequences into a primary sequence. We're not going to get into that today. So here we have our sequence with one piece of footage on it here. And now notice you can click on this footage, and you can move it around forwards or backwards. Or you can move it up and down, if you'll notice that. So I can move it up to different tracks. And then I can zoom in and zoom out. So down here on my timeline here, I can go ahead and make this smaller and move it down here, and then I can get a closer look at my video clip here. And now I can also go ahead and hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC. And if I hold that down and put my cursor right here, I can go ahead and change the size of this. Oh, pardon me, it's Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC. My bad. All right, so you can have just your sequence bar here, or your clip bar, or you can make it larger and you can see the footage that's on there. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in another piece of footage. So I'm going to go back here, I'm going to go backwards, and I'm going to look into my footage folder. And then the next one I'm going to do is I want to have the icon view, because I want to take a look here. And I want to make a connection between the people and the waterfall. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on the waterfall and determine how much I want. Now the waterfall, I can see here, is about 36 seconds long. Don't really want that much. It's all pretty much the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and set my in and my out right about there, and then just drag that footage onto my timeline. That's even still a little too much. So I'm going to zoom out here. I want it to be around the same amount of time as my first clip. So to do that, notice you should default on your selection tool. So that's right here is your selection tool in your tool palette. And that allows you to click on these bits of footage and move them up and down on the tracks. And also, if you move your cursor to the beginning or the ending of a clip, it'll turn into a trimming arrow, and then I can go ahead and trim it down. So again, I can trim here in my source panel, or I can trim right here in my timeline. All right, so now I have this bit of footage, and then it cuts to the waterfall. Now notice something interesting here. The waterfall is a lot larger than this piece of footage. That's because that was shot in 4K, and this is in 2K. All right, so I can quickly make that adjustment just by double-clicking here on the waterfall in my program panel. And then I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit, say 25%. And you can see here that this footage is much larger than my sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring that down. All right, so now they're both the same. Now if you're wondering what your sequence settings are, you can go up here to your sequence and say sequence settings. And it's set to 23.976 frames per second. And that defaulted to that because that was what that footage in New York City was shot at. And that's a very cinematic frame rate. And that's a typical frame rate of any kind of film that you're going to shoot. It has a little bit of a blur, so it gives you a more cinematic feel. We're 2K, which is 1920 by 1080, and some other things that we're not really going to get into here today. Mostly you just want to be concerned with your frame rate and your frame size. All right, so that's what we wanted. We want to be at HD. Okay, so let's bring in a few other clips. So I'm going to go ahead next and do the overhead shot of the students. And I'm going to drag that right into my clip here. And now here's something that's interesting. I didn't take it into my source panel. And you can see I'm kind of running into trouble here. I've got this big clip and I've got the audio that I don't want. But let's just say you did that. And let's zoom in a little bit. So the first thing we can do is trim it right here in our sequence. So now notice these little triangles here. These triangles are indicating that this is the very beginning and the beginning and the ending of this clip. These two clips do not have triangles because they are cropped. So there's a lot more room. So if I move this back, for instance, I can take this waterfall all the way to here. Now you know it's the end of the clip because you see that little triangle. But I don't want it there. I'm going to trim it back. I'm going to move this back. Okay, so if I play this, you can see here in my audio monitor that I've got some audio. Once again, for this particular video, I'm just going to set it to music, so I don't really need that audio. So how do I get rid of it? Right now, if I select the audio and the video, they're synced together, which is what we want. But I'm going to get rid of this. And one way to do that is to just hold down either your Option key on a Mac, on a Mac, or your Alt key on a PC. And then I can just click on just the audio, and I can hit delete if I want. All right, and then I can go ahead and trim this bit, so it's a little smaller. Okay, and then let's just bring in one more piece. I think I'm going to do, the drone footage of the trees, aerial shot of the forest. And once again, I'm going to bring it in like so. Again, I shouldn't do that, but just to give you an idea. And then one of the other things I'd like to show you here is that you can also uncheck this little linked selection. If I uncheck that, I can now move my audio away from my video. And now notice here that we're out of sync, and it's telling us by how much. All right, so that's typically a bad thing. But in this case, the sound is really unimportant. And so I'm just going to go ahead and select it and hit delete, and then I'm going to trim. All right, and now I've got 4 clips in my sequence, and I can play them through. All right, so thanks for joining me, and we'll be doing more editing, and we'll look at the tools in the next video.